Welcome back to Too Long to Read, the European Policy Centre's video explainer series on key enlargement issues. We already explored Russia's and China's influence in EU candidate countries. Very often, Turkey is placed in the same category, portrayed as yet another illiberal actor interfering in the Western Balkans and the Eastern Trio. But is that really the full picture? Turkey is not a classic foreign malign actor. It is more like the neighbor who's always around, a familiar presence that can sometimes make you feel uncomfortable. It is a NATO member and a long-standing EU candidate, yet also an increasingly autonomous regional actor, an insider and an outsider at the same time. So, what does Turkish influence actually look like in the Western Balkans and the Eastern Trio? Is it a challenge to EU enlargement, or in some cases, part of the solution? Just a quick reminder of how we approached external influence. We didn't just describe it, we actually measured it by using the Invigorate EU External Influence Index. The index captures influence across three dimensions: political, economic and societal, covering 9 EU candidate countries between 2013 and 2023. Here, we will summarize a few key findings for you. Turkey's political influence has grown gradually but consistently across both regions over the past decade. Rather than applying pressure, Ankara tends to work with governments. Its influence is built through high-level visits, personalized diplomacy, defense cooperation, and regular strategic consultations. A clear example is Turkey's role as an arms supplier to Kosovo, supporting the development of its security forces through military equipment and drone deliveries. Similar defense partnerships and training programs can be observed elsewhere in the region too. At the same time, Ankara consistently endorses EU and NATO integration of the both regions. That insider position as a NATO ally and long-standing EU candidate gives Turkey a diplomatic space other external actors simply do not have. There is, however, an important exception to this pattern. While Ankara generally avoids overt political meddling, it has shown far less restraint when it comes to exporting its domestic security agenda abroad. Since the failed coup attempt in 2016, Turkish authorities have pressed governments to close Gulen-linked schools and media outlets, freeze their assets and extradite alleged affiliates. In Moldova, 7 Turkish teachers were detained and illegally deported. In Serbia, authorities extradited a Kurdish activist despite the UN request to delay his removal. These cases reveal a different side of Turkey's political influence, a willingness to weaponize neighborly ties to pursue internal security objectives abroad. Over the past decade, Turkey's economic influence has been mostly stable and showing moderate growth. It is driven primarily by trade, construction and infrastructure projects, often delivered quickly and with fewer procedural hurdles than many Western initiatives. This makes Ankara an attractive partner for governments looking for fast and tangible results. However, Turkey's economic influence remains structurally limited. Ankara lacks the financial capacity to create deep, long-term economic dependencies. Its own macroeconomic volatility constrains the scale and durability of its external engagement. Now, let's turn to the societal dimension, where Turkey's influence runs deepest and longest. Societal influence is the most stable and persistent dimension of Turkey's presence across both regions. It is built slowly through culture, religion, and people-to-people ties. Turkish TV series, religious institutions, scholarships, and educational exchanges all play a role in embedding Turkey into everyday social life. This influence is particularly strong in Muslim-majority countries and communities, especially in the Western Balkans, where Turkey is often perceived as a familiar and culturally proximate presence. Crucially, perceptions of Turkey are also shaped and constrained by different interpretations of Ottoman heritage. In parts of the Western Balkans, Ottoman legacies are viewed as shared history. Elsewhere, particularly in Christian-majority societies, they are interpreted more ambiguously, sometimes as a source of unease or political sensitivity. If we step back and look at the bigger picture, one pattern stands out clearly. Turkey's influence has increased across all three dimensions over time, not dramatically or explosively, but consistently. Now look at the country-level picture in 2023. Turkish influence is more pronounced in a cluster of Western Balkan countries, with Albania, Kosovo, and Bosnia and Herzegovina standing out in the moderate influence categories. Close political and security cooperation also places Georgia in the moderate category. All in all, Turkey is gaining ground quietly and incrementally. From everything we have seen so far, one conclusion stands out. Turkey is not simply a challenger to the EU, but it is also not a passive actor either. Ankara has worked to ensure that no major issues in regions that it considers historically close is addressed without its presence. It insists on being irreplaceable. That makes Turkey close and connected, but complicated. In the end, a question arises: how should the EU tackle such Turkish influence? Of course, by strengthening the credibility of EU enlargement, as well as its own soft power. But Turkey's specific role requires two additional steps. First, the EU should institutionalize working-level coordination with Turkey on the Western Balkans and the Eastern Trio. This means regular, structured exchanges between EU and Turkish officials on regional stability, security, and migration. Treating Turkey as a relevant stakeholder can reduce the risk of parallel or conflicting engagement on the ground. Second, engagement must not dilute principles. When candidate countries face inappropriate political pressure from Turkey, the EU should apply clear and consistent conditionality. Financial assistance must remain firmly tied to respect for the rule of law and judicial independence. At the same time, quiet diplomacy should support governments in resisting undue pressure without escalating tensions. If you want to explore the data, country scores, and full methodology in more detail, you'll find the link in the description. Thanks for watching. This was Too Long to Read, your shortcut to understanding EU enlargement.